Oh, I'm Mary Boyd. I'm from the Boyds of Carlsbad and descended from them. That they created the spa. My brother and I were raised in Quebec. My mom and dad came from Carlsbad Springs, but when they married, they moved to Quebec because Dad was a surveyor, did a lot of I worked for the Singer Company. So my brother and I were raised in Quebec, and we didn't come to Carlsbad until I was 10 years old. We moved into what had been the Boyd residence beside the main hotel for, well, quite a while, but the original building was built by Daniel Eastman as an inn or stopping place, and it was a two-part building, not two-section, but two-part, and in the 1940s, one half had been taken down, but we moved into what was left. The village was originally, I believe it was W.O. Woods was the land surveyor that did the survey. It's still on Plan 19 in the Gloucester, or for Gloucester planning, and he surveyed, and when he surveyed, I guess the water, they got into the mineral water, it was quite, it's cathartic, it's cleansing. But anyway, he named the village of the Cathartic. And Cathartic as a name never caught on. It was soon known as Eastman Springs after Daniel Eastman, the first one to settle at the Springs. I think it was my grandfather, Thomas Boyd, who ran the large Springs Hotel. He just thought it was, I guess, an appropriate name. It was named after the big spa in Germany, the Carlsbad Springs. I think which still stands to this day as a much bigger resort. In 1922, I think Thomas Boyd died, my dad's father. 2 years later, his mother died. So the three boys were left to run the hotel, and my dad was only about 17 at the time. But Dad eventually went on to land surveying. I think he was in land surveying by the time he was 19 or 20. Finished his education in Ottawa and just went straight into the business. And he traveled all over Canada surveying and everything. But anyway, his other two brothers were Redvers and Russell. And they ran the hotel for a number of years. And eventually Redvers left to pursue his own career. And Russell Boyd was the one that managed the hotel for years, my Uncle Russell. The hotel was built in a H-shaped design. It was wooden structure. It was well built. It housed approximately 100 people, could sleep 100 people, could sit 150 people in the dining room. It was built in an H-shaped. The east wing was mostly bedrooms on the second and third stories, and the first story were drawing rooms. The cross piece at the front held a large balcony and a veranda that overlooked the lawn, and the west wing again was bedrooms on the second and third floor, and the first floor had the dining room. And off that was the kitchen section. And it had a court at the back, large courtyard at the back, and it had its own bathrooms, bathing rooms I should say, bathing rooms with large tubs for the heated mineral water that was pumped across from the mineral wells. And it had its own bathroom sections. And the men's were always on the first floor and the women's on the second. And behind that, of course, was the laundry and the boiler room. The bathing rooms, as we called them, was a separate section, say, from the bathrooms that we would think of bathrooms. And they had large porcelain tubs, quite large. And that's where the mineral water was pumped, or they got the mineral water for the hot baths. And they would take hot baths, and then after they took the bath, they would sometimes be wrapped in towels and lie out on benches. I don't know, there's a term for that, I'm not sure, but I think it's called a sweat bath or something like that. And I remember my dad saying one of his first jobs when he was a young lad was to go around and tap on the door of these rooms, because the odd time, you just had to be careful because people could get a little faint because they'd had a hot bath, and Well, the main reason that people went to a spa was for their health. The height of the spa was in the late 1800s and in the first 20 years. People came to the spas to cleanse themselves, they got a better appetite, they were encouraged to exercise, and of course the mineral water, they drank and bathed in it. And when I say bathed, they bathed in the bathrooms because it was not a hot springs, it was a cold springs. The water had to be heated. And the water was cathartic in many ways. It cleansed the system out. Now, I would suppose, especially in the early turn of the century, there was a lot of gout, or what they called gout then, because people ate quite richly, often, especially middle class. And they would eat and they would get gout, and then they would come out and they would live a more quiet, ordered life at the springs, and to be encouraged to eat well and exercise and drink the mineral water. And of course they felt a lot better by the time they left. And they would come back year after year. The mineral grounds in themselves were unusual. Maybe a lot of people didn't realize. There was 7 different types initially identified of mineral water at the mineral grounds. And I forget the exact year, but quite at the turn of the century, the Geological Survey of Canada did a survey of the mineral wells and identified these waters. And they identified it as being unique because the waters were so close together, in such close proximity. There wasn't like, it was a fairly small area to have so many different types of water. There was lithium, magnesium, soda, sulfur, and something called magic. But the sulfur, and lithium water were the ones that were mainly used. Lithium was used to drink, and sulfur was more, and soda were more for the baths. When speaking of the spa era in Carlsbad, it was a very different era. A time at the turn of the century and before, it was a quieter life. People nowadays have everything. They have the internet, they have instant communication through their cell phones. They actually are media junkies with their cell phones and their televisions and instant news. People back then entertained themselves, and they enjoyed just sitting around, talking, and relating to each other. Now, I'm sure people still do, but it's just that we require more things to entertain us now than they did back then.